Welcome to Plant More, Worry Less, a podcast by the Huachuma Foundation. We are grateful for the supporters who make this show possible. To learn more about our work or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. Also note, in this podcast we discuss sacred plant medicines for educational purposes only. Nothing herein should be considered medical or legal advice, and we do not encourage using any substances in places where they are illegal. We hope you enjoy this very special episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Plant More, Worry Less podcast. We're so excited to have you here today, and we're also very excited to have Omar joining us today. And so he's very good friends with Hamid, so I'll give Hamid a moment to go ahead and introduce Omar, and then we'll get into his story.
Yeah, so happy to have you, Omar. I've been asking you and trying to track you down for this for a little bit, and you were one of the first people that I thought of when we started to do this podcast. I was like, I gotta get Omar on here because you have such a fascinating story, and I won't be the one to tell it. I only want to share that, I've really valued our connection, and, you actually reached out to me, which was interesting, and we met up a couple times, maybe more now, and just to connect. There's a lot of women in the plant medicine world. And so to find men is sort of like, we got to go out of our way sometimes. But although we live in the same state, we live kind of far in the same city. And so, our time together is a little limited these days, but, it's always great to connect with you. And I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for thinking of me, and very much value our friendship as well, and would love to just touch on how that came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you tell us about yourself, and maybe that'll come up in this story too. But I'm really curious if you want to share your story, so to speak, on how you got into this wacky world of healing and plant medicines and everything else, and maybe it goes back a long ways.
Thank you again. Full name is Christian Omar Lopez, and I'm from Southern California, son of Mexican and Indigenous peoples. And in hindsight, my grandma was an herbalist. I didn't know it at the time, but there was never a Pepto-Bismol or a pill taken. If you had cramps, she would boil magnolia flower. You had stomach pain, it was some sort of mint. And so it was always with herbs and plants, and just loved roaming her big backyard when I was a kid. And I realize now what it was that was happening, and very grateful for that. I get my connection to plants from her for sure. But did my undergrad in Riverside, California, studied history and philosophy. And about 2 weeks after graduating, I was playing professional basketball in Australia. And from there, I had a wonderful 11-year career playing in 9 countries. And in and out of that, I was on the Mexican national team or the Olympic team. And but my second to last year when I was playing basketball, it was the only public flight that we had taken all year. And we were in playoffs, and we were in a playoff series of best of 5, and we were playing at home, and we thought we were going to win the game. So we didn't have a flight booked to go back to the other place, which was Nuevo Laredo. And we lost the game. So we just jumped on a red eye with the other team. And about 2 hours into what should have been about an hour and 15-minute flight, the pilot gets on the intercom and he says, we're having technical difficulties. Our lights and landing gear are not working. So I'm going to do some maneuvers and try to jog it loose. And by maneuvers, he would just climb and then dive bomb, climb and dive bomb. That was a little disconcerting, but didn't hear anything. And about 20 minutes later, he says, Nuevo Laredo doesn't have the capacity to handle an emergency like this. So we're going to fly to Monterrey, Mexico, which is the second or third biggest city in Mexico. Got there, did more maneuvers, and the landing tires weren't coming out. So he gets on the intercom again, and he says, we're just going to essentially crash land in a field. So we're going to fly above this field for 20 minutes and waste all the gasoline if you want to make your calls or do whatever you have to do. And in that moment, guys, it's really important to share that I was a professional basketball player. I cared about things. I cared about the clothes and the women and the cars and how I perceived. But in those 20 minutes in that call, in those 20 minutes in the cabin, all I heard from people all around me was some iteration of, um, tell my mom I love her. Tell my dad I should have called more. Tell my brother I should have gone to Thanksgiving. Tell my dog I love him. And for the first time in the whole flight, I began to feel afraid because I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna die having been wrong about everything. I'm gonna die having been wrong about everything. And so I made a promise to the creator that if I survived, I'd try to do differently. And luckily we did survive. There were some people that were pretty badly hurt. We skidded into the field, and a lot of my wing was torn off. The tail was torn off. But because we had been flying for 20 minutes in the darkness, you could see that as we were beginning to descend, there was a row of ambulances and fire trucks. So I was on the emergency exit wing. I had to get that door off. And as soon as I got the door off, I was hit with flame retardant foam and helped one lady. I jumped off the wing and I ran into the field. But in that field, I sat down and I was kind of making sense with what happened for the first time, really feeling and letting my emotions come out. And I looked at my shoes and I'm wearing Gucci shoes. And I'm like, I hate Gucci. Why am I wearing these shoes? And uh, almost like a psychedelic experience, the knowing, which you guys I'm sure have experienced, the knowing was like, well, you're wearing those because all your teammates think it's cool and you want them to like you. And so that's why you're doing it. And so in that field, I had my first kind of psychedelic experience where I'm like, well, how long have I been living inauthentically? How long have I been living for others? In what areas of my life am I doing this? And so that started a conversation in my mind of transformational experiences. Another really big part of that is um, I saw it as the best day of my life. Well, whereas a lot of my teammates had the trauma of it and they, refused to fly afterwards. They had a lot of fear. And I was like, yeah, we almost died, but you guys are focusing on the inconsequential part. We didn't, we didn't. And so that also got me very interested in trauma and grief and how people can have a shared experience, but some people will take different out of it. So because of that plane crash, I started to go online and kind of look up how other people have transformational experiences without needing to, almost die or meditate in a convent for 20 years. And what kept coming up was psychedelic. And through that, I reached out to elders. We live in Arizona, where there's a big native community, a big, beautiful native community. And I was plugged into the Navajo Nation and some other tribes. And I got to sit with Huachuma and Mushroom. And I saw how completely transformative that could be if you're have the right guides and you're resourced enough to be able to glean the insights and then weave them into your life. So that was the beginning. That was the start for me.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a powerful story, and it resonates a lot with me. I think anybody that's had near death type experiences will resonate with that. And I find it interesting because you sort of said it was like your first psychedelic experience in a way.
Yeah,
And, coming close to death, is like part of the psychedelic experience in a way, right?
sure. There
And
was
you used the term knowing. I wonder if you can tell us more about the knowing.
I'm writing I wrote a book and it's going to come out in a few months, and I dedicate about half a chapter to the knowing. And the knowing, as I have experienced it, is a not necessarily a voice under the medicine, but a guiding inner wisdom that kind of teaches you and coaches you a little bit. And I can tell you about my first experience with the knowing, if we have space for it.
Absolutely.
But
We got all the space.
my very first ayahuasca ceremony had a horrifically hard night. And I remember thinking, I'm like, why do people pay for this? Like, what is the draw? This is, I paid a lot of money to have diarrhea and throw up in my hair, you know? But I found myself in this ruminous thought loop for a while. And I don't remember what I was shown, but I remember my reaction to what I was shown was fear. And as I would feel the fear, these purple metallic spikes would shoot down from the top right line of my vision, and it would keep happening. It would keep happening, and would cower and cower and cower and cower. And after going through this for 5 minutes or 3 hours, a little voice was like, "Have courage." And that was my very first experience with the knowing. But at that point, I was so scared that I was like, it felt like the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. Like, what courage? How does one have courage? I'm mortified, like, um, and I kept going through it, kept going through it. After going through it for another little while, the voice goes, "What other choice?" And I thought about it, and I was like, I'm going to go crazy. But the very next time I'm shown the thing, I stand up and I said, "I have courage." So those purple metallic spikes begin to shoot down again. But as they pass my line of vision, they start to dissolve, and they float down and they start to hover about an inch off the ground. And the knowing voice goes, "Look what a low vibration fear is. Is that where you want to live your whole life? Worried about things that you can't control, worried about, your parents potentially dying, worrying about everything, worrying about everything. You want to live there your whole life?" And I said, "No." And then it goes, "Good." And then it like opened up, and it was like I beat the last guy in Mario Brothers. And I was like, oh my God, it was rooting for me the whole time. It was rooting for me the whole time. And so it was a really special experience for me. But a thing that I tell people is that had I not had the stressors and the tension, I wouldn't have had that, And so, where I think when I first started to work with medicine, I thought a good journey was puppy dogs and rainbows. Whereas now I know in my heart that there have to be stressors, there has to be tension in order for it to be truly transformational. And through that fear, I had just this little voice. And, it's not just in psychedelics. Hikers, when they're climbing Mount Everest, speak of a phenomenon called the third party or something like that. I'd like to make sure I get that right at some point. But it's a voice that tells them, "Don't step there. There's a crevasse," and they just listen to it. And so, whether it is my higher self, whether it is source energy that I happen to be able to tap into for a quick second, it is an inner healing wisdom that guides at key moments, and that is my experience of the knowing. And I call it the knowing because it's not necessarily a voice, it's just a transmission of information.
Yeah, I love that you call it the knowing, because the way that we speak about these medicines sometimes, or even just that phenomenon, sometimes it disempowers. I feel like people might say that have the same experience, but they'll say something else told them, you know, whereas like the knowing is an internal recognition of something. It's like it doesn't really speak to where it comes from, but it's just saying that I know it. And that's a lot more empowering in my eyes, because I do feel like sometimes people will doubt the fact that they get these messages and, need confirmation and everything. But like when you know it, right?
100%. And the plants are teaching, and it's important to have a safe and experienced facilitator. But at the end of the day, we're doing the work, and nobody knows what Hamid needs like Hamid does. So it is you healing you at the end of the day. It's not somebody else doing it. It is us. And to own that, that ownership of, I have the power to do this if I just be still enough and remember that I have the power.
Yeah, amazing. So you mentioned, after this plane crash and then kind of searching for healing and finding plant medicines, and you mentioned the Navajo Nation. I'm actually really curious if you're open to sharing about that, because I feel like the indigenous communities here in the United States are often given kind of, they're just overlooked. The broader focus these days tends to be on South America, and we have these amazing traditions right here next door. So if you're open to sharing about those, I think it would be really beautiful to honor that and to hear about it.
Yeah, no, I would love to. And I have a mentor on the Navajo Nation. His name is Thomas Walker, that I appreciate very much. Um, And so that very first journey with Huachuma, it's actually quite a funny story because I didn't have any information going into it. So I was expecting with this cactus medicine to have the same kind of blast off as ayahuasca or mushrooms or some of the other very potent um, medicine. And I took 4 cups, 4 big cups of tea. And I'm asking my cohort, I'm like, do you guys feel it? I don't know if I feel it. Do I don't think it's working. You fast forward 15 minutes, and I'm sharing super intimate details of my upbringing with these strangers. And I'm like, oh, this is what it does. This is it. This is it. And so it was a really beautiful thing, and to be able to be led in that, and to, I've been a hyper logical brain user. And so all of these things were very woo to me at some point in my life. And by drinking this tea that, grows naturally in a lot of parts of Latin America, that I could dissolve my walls and have these intimate conversations with complete strangers and not feel the need to be anything or say anything. It was very transformational for me. And I've since then had the honor of sitting in several peyote ceremonies. And unlike us in the Western world, they're not like, hey, our peyote ceremonies are every third Friday of the month. There's a person that has their thumb on the pulse of the community. And if somebody needs a healing, if somebody needs a meeting, then they round up the troops. And for that person, the whole community rallies around that person. And just a beautiful thing to go there with the intention of serving somebody, but you get so much in return. In that being there for somebody, you receive so much. And so that's another good example of something we don't really have here, is that communal healing, right? And a thing that Thomas Walker told me that I think you'll appreciate is, he's like, and even though I'm Mexican, he always says, you Western, you Westerners, you don't honor grief, and you definitely don't honor grief communally. You're too quick to get back to productivity. You're too quick to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So when you come to the medicine for the first time, you have this backlog of unattended grief. That's why it feels so hard for a lot of you guys. You didn't allow yourself to do it with your brothers. And he has this beautiful line that you guys might have heard, but shared pain is half pain, shared joy is double joy. So when you bring the pain to that meeting, it dissipates, but when you bring your joy to it, it's elevated in a really beautiful way. And so they honor that, they do it beautifully. And I think a big part of all of these things should be honoring the wisdom keepers, the indigenous communities that have kept these traditions alive. As I was writing my book, you work with editors, and the editors wanted to put the this uh, indemnity statement first. This book is not meant to advocate for or against the use of psychedelics. It's, a means to educational tool kind of thing. And they wanted me to put that first before my formal recognition of the tribes and the wisdom keepers. That's one of the few things that I pushed back on. I said, no, the gratitude needs to be first, and then the indemnity statement. So I think part of it all is honoring that we wouldn't have access to these things without these people. And important to be grateful for that.
That's so beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. Dani, I know you want to say something.
Okay. Could feel it. So I have a question about Huachuma and Peyote and how you experienced them both and how one was, you said Peyote was a bit more communal. Was Huachuma experienced and taught and held in the same way, or was it a bit different of a ceremony?
It was a little bit different of a ceremony. The peyote was with the Native American church. Great boy, my first time I sat, and you feel wonky, you feel sick, you want to lay down, and it's like you're in church, sit up, and you want to go outside and pee, and they're like, don't walk around the fire, and so it was a lot more strict. The roadman was strict, whereas the Wachuma ceremony was, we're going to gather here and we're going to be together. That's the rule. Nobody leaves. We're together. We start the ceremony together. We end it together. But as far as if you want to go and you want to walk on the land together, do it. It was definitely um, communal, but I'm happy that the facilitator said at some point, take time for yourself. Take time for yourself and go walk by yourself, do that. And in that first ceremony, it was in the high deserts of Arizona outside of Flagstaff. And I remember just sitting on the desert looking out. You could look for like 40 miles, and the knowing or the Wachuma or something was like, isn't it funny how you humans think you can own this? Like that you could own this, and like you can take care of it for a little bit, but sooner or later, all of this is going to go back to the land. All of it's going to turn to dust. And so what you have is this moment together, and that is what's important. And just yeah, once again, don't overthink things.
Wow. Thank you. Uh, can I ask one more? Okay. Can I ask one more?
You don't
Okay.
need my permission, Dan.
Okay. I just don't want to cut you off. Okay, so you talk about this knowing, and then you just mentioned the medicine told you. I've heard Hamid sometimes say, oh, well, this person thinks that the medicine is telling them this, but it's actually an aspect of themselves. So how do you relate to ayahuasca telling you something or Wachuma telling you something, and also your deeper knowing telling you something? How do you differentiate, or do you?
I do, yeah. The knowing seems like a very internal dialogue that me telling me that particular experience felt like the cactus was just um almost joking with me, like how could you possibly own this? How does one own free land? Uh and teasing me a little bit, but because at that time I was running this 80-acre ranch outside of Flagstaff, and I took a lot of pride in my stewardship of it, and that it was going to be a really cool place of healing. And it was just like, you can't own any of this. You can watch it for a little bit and take care of it and do a good job taking care of it, but you can't own it, and your bones will be part of this dust eventually, and so you never really own it. So that one felt outside of myself a little bit, whereas the knowing felt like it's me telling me or a higher version of me telling me. And that's mostly guidance, actually, not an opinion or an observation. The knowing is usually comes in the form of, to me, in guidance.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dani is a big fan of the fire ceremonies, by the way. So I could see she was smiling when you were talking about that it's more formal. Because I think one of the things maybe that resonates for her, I'm not going to speak for you, is that formality of, what the Native American church would call a peyote meeting, or, what we call a fire ceremony, which our tradition that Dani and I are part of comes from sort of the Native American church lineage. But that kind of attitude at which people enter the ceremony, which is really, you commented that it's not like, okay, we're going to have a peyote meeting every 3 weeks and we just come and we do our healing, that there's a huge intention around one person. And I'm curious if you would share a little bit about that, because I feel like the Native American church is, as far as traditions, it's the oldest peyote tradition here that's continuous. And not a lot of people get to experience it. I mean, you've been very fortunate to have that experience. And I think people would be really curious to hear, what is a peyote meeting? Like, how did it go down? And, what kinds of things really stood out to you there? Besides what you already mentioned, just the
Yeah.
formality.
This particular one, a woman had lost a son and was in a difficult way. And so several of her peers sponsored it. And because of a connection that I had, I was able to go to it. And it I didn't really know what I was getting into, Hamid, at that point. And I had to toss all of my judgments aside because each roadman is different, as I'm sure you guys know. And in my lineage, in my mentorship that I've done, every facilitator is a teacher. And at the first particular one, there was no teaching happening, right? It was like you take your seat and they fed me like 30 peyote buttons, and then they're like, just sit up. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, they didn't tell us beforehand, don't walk around the fire this way, don't do these things. So it was a very difficult journey for me. But in that, the peyote itself was beautiful. It felt nostalgic to me. My family comes from the Huichol tradition, so it felt very nostalgic. And I'll tell you a really beautiful part of it. The roadman, and again, I don't mean to demean or poo on anybody, but he was just a kind of an arrogant guy. He's like, I'm the man. This is what you do. And he's yelling at people. And I'm fine with chastising people if you tell them beforehand that they're not supposed to do that, right? If you give somebody 30 peyote buttons and they lay down and you didn't tell them they can't lay down, how do they know? But so as I'm struggling with, well, this guy's not a teacher, he's more just punitive, and what's happening here? The peyote came to me really, really beautifully, and it was like, differentiate between me and the human element here. Differentiate between me and the egoic human element here. And it was always telling me to look at the fire, look at the fire, look at the fire. And right after that, so the roadman was kind of a more on the arrogant side, but he had this really sweet sidekick named Sky. And pretty much all Sky did, and he was your stereotypical Navajo elder, right? And so pretty much all he did was throw cedar on the fire anytime somebody got well. And at one point, the facilitator goes, Sky, do you have any words? Sky gets up and, I guess all I want to say is that you should open your heart and live in a good way. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. And so the peyote was like, there's two leaders here. Which one do you want to be? You want to be the brash, arrogant one, or you want to be the strong, silent one that can hold space and influence softly? And so all of it had to happen exactly how it happened, but all of the ritual of it is extremely beautiful. The care that they take for the fire, I mean, the reverence that they have for the fire and the tending to it is absolutely stunning. It's been one of the honors of my life to be invited to these, be able to share these things. And I leave always with gifts and teaching. But for that one, that was a really special one to me because it was my first one, and it was like, which one do you want to be? Do you want to be brash and you want to be like this, or do you want to be kind and soft? And so now I tell people to live in a good way.
That's so good. Sometimes you don't have to say that much, honestly.
100%.
I can really appreciate that because, and I don't know if it's just that way within that tradition, but like my teacher who did fire ceremonies, he didn't really tell us either. You find out, like, this is many years ago, you find out you're not supposed to lay down like during your first fire ceremony where
Yeah.
he's asking people to sit up, and you find out, about which way to go. I kind of knew that because I feel like even in temescals and sweat lodges, you're supposed to go in a certain direction and not go between the altar and the fire, especially in the fire ceremony. You go behind where the roadman might have their things. And yeah, but I wonder if that's just like the way it is. Like, they don't want to have the class beforehand, but you learn on in that circumstance too.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it was my preconceived notions of there should have been a talk beforehand, but it's also maybe that's not how it goes, and I learned how I was supposed to learn, just felt a little bit punitive. And again, it was never directed at me. I was able to sit in lotus the whole 16 hours, and I'm pretty grounded in my medicine work. But there was other people that were getting scolded and you're in church, sit up, you're in church. And I was like, God, there's got to be a kinder way to say that. And so, but big teachings all around, big teachings all around. As Hamid knows, I love the music. The music is a big part of these ceremonies, and to be able to hear a wet drum and all that entails was, I mean, lit me up, lit me up.
Yeah. Yeah, let's share about that too. I'm curious. The water drum and what else they have, rattle.
Rattles, yeah, I got to sing songs. What I didn't know at the time too was that that drum kind of goes at one tempo. It's like pop, 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 and I'm the Icaro, and I'm like, it doesn't go with that. And he's like, make it go with that. So, but powerful, powerful, um, and really emotional. There's something about the drum that's like, the earth's heartbeat, and it's really stirring to me. Sometimes it could be intense. So I love it. That's what I love about ayahuasca is that some songs may have it, but some songs will come back and level me out a little bit. But it has a purpose. It's a wonderful tool, and the music is half of it now for me. It is, yeah.
Mhm. You mentioned that your ancestry is Huichol, and curious, have you ever been to a Huichol ceremony?
I have outside of Guadalajara. So when I played basketball, I played for 3 years professionally in Guadalajara, and I was able to experience some of my roots there and outside of there. I went to some other ceremonies around. I played in Veracruz and Mexico City, Oaxaca. So I kind of got to experience some of the mushrooms of the Maria Sabina line, and had through sports got to experience a lot of really cool things. Um, but it wasn't. I didn't start. It was out of curiosity and not to look inside at that point. It was more for the story kind of thing. Unfortunately, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I was in my mid 20s and I just didn't have the reverence for it that I do now. And some of these places I would go and eat a taco full of ants and I'd be like, well, this is awful, but I'm going to do it for the story. And so it was kind of in that line too of just to say I did it and see what it's about. But now um, I can't do it that way anymore. Once you treat these indigenous medicine as they're supposed to be treated, you can no longer go to just fooling around and yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, it takes a little time. I think it takes longer for men, maybe. I'm just generalizing for us to figure out what's really important. And like you shared, sometimes it does require the universe to kind of like smack us upside the head and say, okay, you know, this is your life. Um, what are you going to do with this life? And is it all about Gucci shoes or is there more to it? Um, yeah, so tell us more. Like, where have you mentioned the peyote and the Huachuma. You briefly touched on ayahuasca, but I know you've had lots of experiences. I'm curious, and if you want to share anything about other experiences.
Yeah, one that I think is apt for this conversation is about 5 or 6 years ago. I was in an ayahuasca ceremony, and this particular one, the medicine almost like pulled a chair right up next to me, and she was like, "Hey, You're fluent in Spanish, you play guitar, and you know zero Icaros. What's up with that? And I was like, well, Mama, I don't serve you yet, and I didn't feel the called to learn your songs because I don't serve you. She goes, no, 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 no. You can sing me to a dying person. You can sing me to somebody having a panic attack. I could be a lullaby. I can be a lot of things. I am not just ayahuasca music. You need to learn these songs and you need to learn what they say, you know? And so that started me on learning the ayahuasca songs. And then fast forward like 2 years, and I'm in a ceremony, and with this facilitator, he asked me to sing all the time. And so very egoically, I had my set list, right? I'm like, these are my 3 songs. I've been practicing them. They're bangers. They're clean. I'm gonna kill it. It's gonna be amazing. So that's the backdrop for this ceremony. So 2 days before, my wife Rebecca, she goes, "Hey, this really beautiful song by James Blunt called Monsters about fathers and say goodbye and stuff like that." And I heard it on a Thursday and really liked it. I fooled around with it a little bit, and then the next day I was in ceremony. And in ceremony, I'm asked to sing. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to sing a song, and then will you sing afterwards?" So I'm preparing my Icaro that I've been practicing, and Mama Aya goes, "Hey, I need you to sing that monster song. There's a lot of father energy in the room right now." And I did the thing that I tell people not to do. And I'm like, no, what? I was like, this isn't open mic night. I don't even know that song. I just heard it yesterday for the first time. What do you mean sing that song? And she's like, yeah, I'll help you. You know, there's a lot of father wound, and it would be really helpful if you sang that song right now. And I was like, no, no, I'm not going to sing that song. And then she pulled out the draw 4 card, and she kind of made my sphincter pucker. And she's like, I can make you poop yourself at any moment. At any moment. You're not in control here, and I really need you to sing the song. So, under the threat of soiling myself, I sang the monster song, and it touching, and it really landed for a lot of people in there. Once I got to my mat, the medicine Mama Aya came back and she goes, "Hey, I'm sorry I had to do that to you, but it's not about you. Not about your set list. It's not about what you think sounds good. It's not about what you practice. What does the room need in this moment? In this moment, what is needed?" And that was what was needed. So thank you for being an instrument of that. But it's not about you. So through that experience, I realized that I had to learn a lot of Icaros because they're tools, right? And if there's a woman who, let's say, lost a child, am I going to sing an Icaro about love to that? That's the wrong tool. That's the wrong tool. So, um, that taught me that I needed to be well versed and have a wide range of protection and cleansing and soft, and to be able to meet the moment and kind of tune into to what the room needs in that moment and then use that tool. And so the powerful tool when you got them.
I love that. And I love that awareness too, because I think that's common for people who are new to the medicine space. They kind of have the performative aspect about singing. And, when you are like in a facilitator role, which if you're sharing your voice in a ceremony, you have to be aware that it's facilitating others' processes, of course. And, that awareness is really key because I've definitely been in circumstances where people will share a song that is, not necessarily what the room needs, but it is what they need
Sure.
for their ego to feel good in that moment. And
Yep.
then, it's like it reverses the role of the space holder sometimes, where then the room is holding space for the person who has to share that song. And it's fine too. I mean, no judgments, but I love that you've kind of weaved that into an awareness and a story around it, because that's a really teachable moment. What other kind of music are you doing? I know you've shared guitar songs and
Yeah.
Little Mermaid songs, and
So another thing that I do, I don't know if we've talked about this a lot, Hamid, but I've been a death doula for 3 or 4 years. And when you're singing to somebody at the end of life, well, first of all, at the end of life, there's no longer that consoling aspect of like, hey, things will get better, right? So what can I do? I can sing you a song. And so because of that, I know a wide array of songs because some of these people are 80 years old. They don't want an Icaro. They want to hear Stand By Me or a Bob Dylan song or something like that. So always learning, love homework. I love when people say, hey, I think this would sound good on the acoustic guitar or the stuff like that. So while I predominantly try to learn medicine songs, I'm always open to learning new songs. And in that same vein of them being a tool, I now know songs in like 6 languages. So I think that's a really beautiful thing too. And when you learn songs in a language, I think you'll understand this, that you don't really know. There's not a whole lot to hold on to, and so you have to learn them phonetically, syllabically, and so it takes a lot of work, and it's really an enjoyable process, but it's a time-consuming process too. Especially, some of those Shipibo songs. Uh, Shipibo is a complicated language. There's a lot of these indigenous groups that grow up using ayahuasca. Their language is incredibly complex. So learning those has been a really cool thing, and then uh, trying to utilize those in the best way possible. But yeah, wider range of songs from my old punk rock days that inspired me. The bands that inspired me to learn guitar are Modest Mouse and Death Cab for Cutie. So very kind of rock emo stuff. And learned Under the Sea. Learn a lot. I have a lot of Disney songs that I whip out for kids.
That's so good. Yeah. For anybody
I have a
listening,
question.
I don't know if your Instagram is public or private, but I would recommend people check out your video of Under the Sea. It's just so good. Um, Curious, you're mentioning like Shipibo and this kind of jungle traditions. You spent some time in the jungle, and
Week.
yeah, tell us what's going on. What was your first time in the jungle, and then bring us up to the present because I know you've got some trip going coming up.
So I um, am under the mestizo Quechua tradition, and my biggest mentor has been a gentleman named Don Nissan, and his discipleship came under Don Jose um, Campos, who I'm sure you may have heard. And so he's out of Pucallpa. And can you want to just talk about what a dieta is, kind of, or?
Yeah, that would be
Uh,
awesome.
Yeah, so a dieta is a very restricted diet in the jungle where, I mean, it's essentially, I'm about a 3,000 to 3,500 calorie a day guy. I'm 6'8", 250 pounds. I'm a big dude. Yeah. And in the jungle, we would get a half cup of non-seasoned quinoa in the morning and a hard-boiled egg. And in the evening, a half cup of unseasoned rice, brown rice, and a unseasoned boiled potato. So I go from like 3,500 to 600 or 700 calories, but that's a very integral part of the process because as your body's kind of degrading in the jungle, it's very hot, it's very humid. It opens you up to the possibility of having a relationship with a plant. And other besides doing the medicine work in the evenings, you are given, depending on the plant, you're given about a pitcher. Let's say Lupuna. Lupuna, we know here in the West is a giant kapok tree. In the Amazon, it's considered one of the biggest and wisest trees. And so they boil some of the bark in a root system, and they leave you a big pitcher of it in your outside of your tambo in the morning, and you just drink this brew. And now, even 6 years ago, if you would have told me yeah, you go to the jungle and you have a relationship with a plant, and it's just like, well, that's far out. What does that mean? You know? But as your body kind of weakens because of the extreme diet and no minerals, no nutrients, something happens, and you get the benefits and the gifts of these beautiful, wonderful plant teachers. And you don't even have to know what those gifts are. I mean, the people, my first time, the people that dieted with Bobinsana, they're like, I couldn't stay out of the river. I was always in the river. Well, Bobinsana is a plant that grows along the river. When I dieted with the Lupuna tree, I was always playing music and writing. I think I'd finished a third of my book in the jungle. Well, that's known for its wisdom and known for being a musical thing. So something happened. I'm not intelligent enough to say what happens, but some transference of gifts and wisdom happens, and you leave there changed. And every time you go back, you diet with a different plant. And a really beautiful thing. I had a brother named Pete that just dieted with mapacho, and mapacho is a hard thing to diet with. Mapacho is jungle tobacco and known as Nicotina rustica. And that one, instead of dieting with a big pitcher every day, you just take a big shot of it a couple of times. And it's extremely purgative. I mean, within 10 minutes, it's coming out one end or the other, you know. But after dieting with the mapacho, he said my relationship with all the other plants that I've dieted with was strengthened. You know, my relationship with Renakia was strengthened. My relationship with Shiwawaka was strengthened. So they all have their beautiful gifts. Your facilitator, depending on what you hope to get out of the experience, hopefully will pick a plant that will help you with that. I didn't have a whole lot of capital T traumas to work on, so I was given the Lupuna as it is wisdom, and I wanted to know myself better. That's what I went there for, to shine a kind of a light on the dark corners of my psyche, and it was just life changing, life changing. To be able to do that, and there's no real way you can replicate that. I think here, like you can there.
Yeah, I know Dani really wants to go do a dieta. I've done a 1 month dieta in the Amazon, and then here, and you mentioned you can't really replicate it. I do still my own types of dietas that are not guided,
Sure.
with plants here, and I would consider it more like a social dieta in a sense because I'm not in isolation. But there's some Western teachers that really come from like more like the herbalist background that do teach about plant communication. I think it's really interesting because for most people in our culture, like here in the United States, we don't go to school and learn that, you can learn from a plant. We're taught to like mow the lawn and like trim the hedges, but we don't really consider that the plants are, our brothers and sisters, our grandmothers and grandfathers, they're our relations, and they each have their own teachings. And it's just amazing to me the connection between the people there in the jungle and their environment, and kind of like the knowing you had when you were up in Flagstaff, like looking out at, this vista that like, how could we own this? Like in a way, like we are owned by the earth. We are owned by the land. We're just like the plant. Like the plant doesn't claim to own, the land that it's living on. Like how ridiculous that humans think that they could claim that in some way. And it's sort of like the reversal of things, and somehow seeing it clearly, for the first time in these dietas is so powerful. So
Yeah.
powerful.
We don't have a relationship with nature here, and we kind of see plants as something to be used by as we wish, right? You go there and you're like, oh, we're kin. And if you go back far enough in our evolution, we are kin. I'd love to share with you guys one insight that I got from the Lupuna tree. And so working in my tumbo, I felt like I got this key. And the Lupuna was like, most of these Icaros are you're asking. either a plant, an ancestor, an animal to do said thing, cleanse, protect, ease, help this person, this thing. So you're asking this to do this for this. And because I'm fluent in Spanish, I was able to write like 70 things for each one, right? 70 plants or animals to do this for this. And I felt like I had gotten the key. I was like, with this key, I could do essentially thousands of Icaros because I could just change, I'll ask the Lupuna to help protect my grandmother. And I just had gotten it. I'd gotten it. And the last night before we were about to leave, the Lupuna came to me in my tambo and was like, okay, you did a really good job getting that. Now give it to everybody. And I was like, what? I was like, this is mine. I spent time. I'm special because I have this key, right? I'm different. I got it. I figured it out. This is mine. And Lupuna goes, all those gifts that I gave you freely. I gave you freely. And these songs are my seeds. If you share these songs, people will become aware of the plight of the Amazon, the overforestation, mining, uh, you know, raising of lands for livestock. So if you give these songs away, you'll be helping me. And so when we were finally able to speak after the 2 weeks of silence, the facilitator asked me if I'd like to speak, and I said, first of all, I'm going to apologize to you guys because I didn't want to share this with you, but the Lupuna tree said I had to share this with you, and I have this little kind of key, and it'll can help with your singing if you would like it. And I thought that was so powerful. I thought that was so powerful. It checked my ego immediately, and it was just like, you you want to be special. I gave you I gave this all to you, and you now want to hoard it. Give it away. Give it away, And so it was a really beautiful moment for me to just sit in my own egoic mind and be like, why do I feel the need to keep it? Why do I want to just feel like I'm special because I have it when it feels so good to give it away? And that's what these plants do. They don't charge us. I mean, they might charge us with a purge or something like that, but even that is too for us. Give it all free. Give it all freely. Everything in jungle is symbiotic. They all work together. I was the only kind of neurotic primate that felt separate from it, right? But like everything works together there. They all want to succeed. Um, if one tree is felled through the mycelial connection, they send it stuff to help. And I think that's something that we need to buy into, that we are essentially a great ape, and need we need to help each other. We need to be together. Such an individualistic society, um, we need to be more willing to just be helpful to each other and work together.
That's awesome. I have a question about singing now that we're kind of like back on the topic again. So I was going to ask you if you had been a musician before you got into medicine work, and you kind of answered that. You said you started playing guitar with the punk rock influence. And my question is, how did working with medicine influence your singing or change it or give you a different perspective? And like, what was kind of that journey like?
I had never experienced anything, playing in coffee shops and doing open mics and stuff like that. It was me that made the song precise, right? If I practiced diligently and I was able to know all the chords and all the words and sing it in a resonant way, then it would come out well. Whereas under the medicine, there's a surrender that happens, and the medicine itself does a lot of it. You're more of a vessel. But granted, you have to have some mastery of the song, right? But a lot of these Icaros don't have to be sung exactly. I don't sing all of them like Don Nissan does. It's more or less a melodic framework. And in that, you change whatever you need to change to fit what you're experiencing in that moment. What does the room need again, right? Always back to what does the room need. So these Icaros are kind of just frameworks. And you can't really do that with other songs. You can't take a Death Cab for Cutie song and just use only the melody and change everything else. It kind of you want to honor the original song. Whereas these Icaros, I feel supported in changing and making your own. And you can change the tempo, you can change the pitch, you can change all these things. You can use the drum sometimes, the chacapa, rattle. And so to me, it's a lot more freeing, and there's a lot of trust that I'm going to be helped. I have a story that beautifully shows that if we have time. Um, about 6 months ago, I went into ceremony, and it was my first time ever feeling like I had to release something. And usually I feel very protected by my ancestors or my ability to know what's mine and what's not. But I had a heaviness. And I went into ceremony feeling like maybe I was holding too much space, doing too much death work, and I needed to release something. So under the medicine, about 2 or 3 hours in, I'm asking the medicine, I'm like, can you help me release something? I feel burdened by something. I don't have a good eye on what it is. And I kept asking, kept asking, kept asking. And finally the medicine was like, if you want to release something, why don't you actually try grieving your dog that died? And I was like, what? And as soon as she said that, I was like, tears. I mean, I can feel it in my throat now. And I was going through it for like 40 minutes. And like the medicine sometimes does, I got tested because the facilitator goes, hey, you want to sing next? And I'm like in this deep grief that I'm finally allowing myself. And here's the thing, guys, I wasn't consciously bypassing it. I thought I had grieved him. I thought I had cried, but it was not enough. Um, and so I know I have to sing next. I'm like fumbling for my guitar, trying to find it. And I play a song. It was a song by the Abbott Brothers called No Hard Feelings. It's a beautiful song. But I'm glad it landed for people and people really enjoyed it. But in my ceremony, in my mind, what was happening for me is I wasn't playing guitar and singing. I was holding my dead dog and crying, you know? So, the Mama Aya completely did it all, the strumming, the singing, all of it. I don't remember saying a word. In my mind, I was just holding my dog and crying. So there's a just a supernatural kind of helping that happens if you trust it, and if you're willing to surrender to the process.
Mm. Do you find do you find it different to sing on ayahuasca versus Huachuma?
Yeah, I don't know if I sing a whole lot on Huachuma. Yeah.
It's
Um,
different.
Oscar is a type, on mushrooms. I definitely sing, especially with the guitar. If I do sing anything with a chicapa or a rattle on the Huachuma, and it seems to be a little more tribal and indigenous. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Thank you. Just so curious about singing because I'm kind of like new on my singing journey and just beginning to open up and free my voice. And it's like a very vulnerable, sort of brave thing that happens every time have an altar come around. I'm getting a little bit more used to it, but I remember singing on ayahuasca and it was a little bit easier for me. It was like I had a little bit of help once I figured it out and just went for it. But Wachuma, it's like it's just a little bit more difficult,
sure.
which is good. Which is good. I'm here for it. And what I find is that when I sing during ceremony, even if I'm embarrassed or it doesn't come out the way I think it does, or my throat sounds like I just smoked 1,000 cigarettes or whatever, it's not like who is that? When I come home and I'm singing outside of ceremony, it's almost like it unlocks something or allows me to sing a little bit more freely. Like I think it's like a freeing that is happening. Anyway, I'm just so curious about people's journey with singing because I'm like in the beginning of mine.
Beautiful. And I encourage you to keep it up. A helpful tool that Don Jose told me was whistle it first. Being able to whistle it will help you learn it. So if you're able to whistle almost the whole song, then you have the melody and then you can enter the words afterwards. But whistle it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I can certainly thank ayahuasca for teaching me how to sing too, and really just getting me out of my own way, sort of And I now that you're sharing about, your experience of singing that song was you holding and grieving your dog. It's very interesting because when I'm facilitating, there's so much going on. Like in the room, for instance, there can be like, people over here, this person's doing this, and I'm connecting with that. And then there's something happening over here, but I'm also singing and playing guitar. Sometimes I have this awareness that, oh, I'm singing and playing guitar, but then I'm also like in some kind of conversation, like over here and over here. And it's like you see all of these things happening. And it's sort of like if I don't know who's playing the guitar anymore. I don't know who's doing the singing anymore. It's a really interesting phenomenon. I've been a musician my whole life, but I never sang, and it was in the jungle. When I had signed up for my initiation in the jungle, they didn't tell us that we would have to sing. I think if they would have told me, like, you're coming to the jungle and you're going to have to sing Icaros and learn them, I probably wouldn't have gone because I was that terrified of singing at the time. And I didn't understand that that was 90% of what it means to be a curandero is using your voice, which I'm very thankful for now because I totally resonate with that. Like you're saying with the songs and, your death doula work and, whoever, just having the ability to hold space and sing, whatever the context, it's just, that's the medicine. That really is, what fills me up most is the music part. There was one other thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned when you said about how the Lupuna tree said, this, I give it to you freely, and you need to share it with others. Because one of the things that our teacher and friend Miguel in Peru always says is like, nature is teaching us how to be in service. That like nature is always in service. And if you look at all of nature, it's just everybody's in service. All of the relations are in service. And then somehow we kind of separate ourselves to think like, okay, no, I'm going to hold on to this little thing. And then I heard something really recently that it reminded me of this song thing you shared, which is I posted a video on my Instagram of a song that was shared, and it's our friend. Our friend sings it. Her name is Esther. She's amazing. And like her voice is like an angel. And so all of this last retreat, I was just so obsessed with this song. And, I took it upon myself to like really learn the song and start to sing it. And it's like got medicine in it. So it's almost like, it has medicine to like hear it, but like when you sing it, it unlocks something,
Oh,
it unlocks something for you, like when in that experience. And then I shared it. And then she's just told me that her experience of hearing her song shared back was just like so powerful. And that, one of the things that was told to her by somebody was like, your healing process around that song is complete. Because usually we write a song sometimes when we're healing. And it's like, your healing process is complete when you share that song with your community and then they share it back to you. And I'm like, that's so amazing.
uh, I had a similar but not similar. My friend Gabrielle from the Washoe tribe of Northern California, bordering on Nevada, kind of the Tahoe area. Her mom was given a song by the plants. It's a song in their language. It's for the four direction, and really loved it. It's a powerful drum song, and I loved it so much I learned it. And during a ceremony one time, I asked her if I could sing it. It's in her language, and she was like, and sang it. And the next day, she goes, "Not only is it okay that you sang it, but it was a big honor for us because there's only about 40 to 50 native speakers left, and it could be a dead language within the next two generations. So the fact that you would learn it really meant a lot. And there's something really powerful about learning the music. Dani, to that, I wanted to tell you that a thing that helped me when I first started too is that I saw these songs as prayers and blessings. And the medicine was like, is there a wrong way to pray for somebody? There's no wrong way, you know? So like even if it's not the most uh resonant or most beautiful, at the end of the day, it's a prayer and a blessing, and that is always good, always on time.
Amazing. Thank you for that. That's awesome.
It's the second person to tell her that.
First time you
Yeah.
Wait, did you already share that story? I don't think you did because we didn't release that episode.
Yeah, we didn't release that episode. I do.
incredible.
Should I share it?
Yeah,
Um,
go for it.
okay, I'll do like a sort of a Cliff Notes version, maybe. We'll see how it comes. Um, it was our first time, it was my first time in Peru with Hamid, and it was my first ceremony ever with Miguel. And it was my first ceremony ever singing, ever, especially in front of Hamid, which he's like my sound teacher and everything. So it was making me so nervous. And he was sitting right next to me. And we had all these amazing people with us. And then the rattle was coming around. I was like, oh my God, I'm next. And so I did it and I sang this song called Native Prayer. It's probably like one of my top three favorite songs of all time. And it means a lot to me. And so I did it. I went for it. I was shaky, whatever, but I just did it. And then at the end, I was like, I ran up to Hamid. I was like, Hamid, what did you think of my song? And he's like, well, how did it feel? And I was like, well, it felt amazing. I love that song. And he's like, good, because it's a prayer, not a performance. And I was like, "Aye." But it was like so powerful because it was like right after we drank the medicine and we're in the first altar. So I walked with that line all day, and I went over and over in my head, and I was like, but was that a performance? I was like, well, of course, in some way I want it to sound good. I don't really want to sound bad or whatever that means. But I was like, no, I really love that song. It means a lot to me. And as I got to know the people in the group more, it like sings about the children. And one of the guys in the group was like a teacher, and then about Sister Moon. And one of the girls became one of my really close friends. And so I felt like I was almost like singing to the group in a way. And so the song made more and more sense. But by the end of the ceremony, all day walking with this question, was it a performance or was it a prayer? By the end, before the last altar, I sang this I Love You song, which has become like my anthem. I sing it at the end of every one of my sound meditations and in the nursing homes, and every single fourth altar is just like my favorite song. And the medicine,
Because I love you so much song?
yes, yes. And I like really sang it, and for the first time ever felt what it was like to pray a song. And I was singing I love you to like all the people I was with, to this experience, to my grandmother, and I was just like outpouring love and love and love. And the medicine was strong, and at the time I was like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I hope that it's coming out, because I don't even know where I'm at in the song. It was just coming. And at the end I actually didn't need to check and see how it sounded to anybody. I didn't even care because it felt so good. And I was like, oh, that's a cool distinction between internal validation and external validation. And like, I really got where to sing from in that whole ceremony. And then now when I play my flute, it's from that space. When I speak, I do my best to make it from that space. When I teach yoga, that like showed me how to really hone in on that space and where things can come from. And I come from a background of being a professional athlete as well. And I was a bodybuilder. So I was like performing. That was like what I was basically doing. And I was in cheerleading, all these different things I did. It was like very performance based. And so that was a really hard thing to rewire for me. And singing being so new for me, I like didn't know where to come at it. And so anyway, that moment, that sentence has changed everything.
Thank you very much for sharing. What a God.
Thanks for listening.
Do you do it in English and Spanish?
English and Spanish, and then there's another language in there called Mexica. And
Pampani mi la sotla, pampani mi la sotla, 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 pampa la sotla, ikano chino yoro hey yana hey. Is that one?
it's close. but it's not that. But I love that one too. I'm gonna
She
have to
wants
like
to learn that
re-listen.
one now.
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch that part of the podcast a million times.
Happily.
And I'm like, I want to learn it in Quechua and Polish so I can sing it to my grandmother. And so I'm like, oh, how many languages? Probably the song would go on forever and ever, but it's inspiring to be able to send out so much love.
Absolutely. What came to me as when you were saying that, uh, like this philosophical debate of whether you could be truly altruistic. Maybe you guys have heard it, like, you know, when we do something kind or good, it's not completely altruistic because we get something we feel makes us feel good, right? There's something coming back. And so the question is like, is anything really altruistic? And I think if the end result is good, who cares if it's a little bit performative? If you're doing good, if you're saying a prayer, if you're telling people you love them, if it's a little bit performative too, then it's okay because what you're doing is essentially good. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. That's helpful.
So good. So you mentioned you're going back to the jungle soon. What's going
What,
to happen in that trip?
buddy, what I hope to get from it is clarity on whether I should get my doctorate. Um, a thing that I feel one of my capstone projects in the thesis was the use of psilocybin to help in with end of life agitation and death anxiety. And I would love to be able to essentially use it at the end of life to help people kind of in those last kind of soften the blow and make that transition easier. Because there's a lot of people like my grandmother. My grandma's 98 years old. She's done everything. All she has left to do is make that final transition, but it's terrifying, you know. And if there was a way that we could help that, they're doing it in Canada. They have medically assisted dying in Canada. And so those are things that I believe in fundamentally. Uh, and think in order to be able to do any of those things, I should probably need a PhD, but I really want to get right on, am I doing it just to do it? Am I doing it because I want to be called Dr. Lopez? Am I doing it for the right reason? My intention for it is to do that. And then I'm sure there'll be lots of other gifts that come of it as well. That's my main intention.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, it might be too big for this. We might have to have a whole nother uh, podcast about it, but I am really curious about your relationship with death and like a lot of the work that you're doing, you know, as a death doula, and then even like this intention of helping people to transition, you know, peacefully. It's sort of like a bigger question, which is like, what is the relationship with death? And I know your wife is around death a lot too. Is it just coincidence, or is this like part of your karma, like part of why you're here?
That's a great question, buddy. She went to mortuary science school before we met. So it was definitely her path. But for me, I don't know if this is the case for you guys, but I see a lot of overlap between medicine work and death. You know, I would say once or twice a month, I get a client say, you know, I felt like I was dying, I feel like some death was happening. I'm like, something did die. Maybe an old way of seeing yourself, shame, guilt, you know, old contracts. Something did die. But a big thing that they have in common for a lot of times in uh, medicine space, we essentially give people, right? You can cry here. You can make noise here. You can feel deeply here. Be vulnerable here. And at the end of life, that's the same. And for both the dying person and the family, there's you know, a lot of times you get a family that doesn't want to leave the bedside of a person because they don't want to go get a hamburger in case mom passes away while they're gone. And I'm like, if your mom wants you here, she'll wait. You know, you, 'cause that's the thing is that they don't, it's such a highly personal thing. You hear of the examples of people waiting 11 days to get the visit from the brother and then they finally pass away. Well, there's the exact opposite of that is that they wait for them to go get a hamburger. They want to do it alone. It's very personal. So there's a lot of overlap. And But my dharma, buddy, I think in life is to just help people be less afraid. So that is why I have these avenues. There's a lot of fear in the medicine space, and a lot of fear in life, and I don't think it has to be that way. I was just telling good friend Steve, because he was talking about how his mentor passed away so gracefully, and I was like, he gave you a wonderful teacher. I tell people sometimes that every once in a while somebody will ask me, how do I die? How does one die? I'm like, um, it, you decide how you want to do it, but know that it is going to be your final teachings for your family. You are bitter, angry, go kicking and screaming, they'll associate death with that fear. But if you are able to somehow do it with dignity, grace, that'll be a big do to your family. Like, oh, uh, at the end of the day, buddy, one of the biggest teachings that I got from my last ceremony is the fact that it ends is why it's special. Every work of art is meant to be finished. Every book should be finished. If your favorite movie lasted forever, that would suck. It should finish. There should be, that's what makes it special. And so um just it's all finite, and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it, that we have this moment right now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. You know, the interplay between life and death, and you know what happens in ceremonies, but also just this constant cycle that brings us into awareness of the magic and the beauty of it all. Um, I want to make sure that we talk about, you know, the things that are going on in your world that you'd like to share about, including you mentioned you have a book, so I'd love to hear more about this book and, you know, what else you have going on that you would care to share with our audience about.
The book is fully published, will come out in November. It's called Safe Travels: Tips and Tools for Psychedelic Navigation. And it originally started just because I felt like I was sharing the same idioms and stories and examples. Like, for instance, one that I share all the time is psychedelics is like jumping into a river. If you put your feet up and put your head back, it's actually quite lovely. And when it's done with you, it'll leave you on a bend or on a beach somewhere. But if you jump into that river and you try to be in control and even try to swim upriver, then you're like, why is it doing this to me? This is relentless, when all it's asking you to do is surrender and go with it. And so found that I was saying the same things to all these different clients, and I was like, I should just put it in a book and give it to them, you know. So that was how the idea started. And so half of it is educational. I touch on the kind of five major entheogens that we use in therapy and what they do, contraindications, what you can expect. I touch on preparation, the felt experience, and integration, which we now know are not three separate things, but three very carefully interwoven parts of the same thing, right? It's like, if you don't, it's not just about having experience, it's about what you do with it. It's all about what you do with it. Um, and then I put in 11 real life stories of either myself or my clients that we've experienced that tie in those medicines and give real world examples of how they could be beneficial. Um, so excited about that. Don Nissan wrote the foreword for the book, and a Huichol elder wrote a foreword for it as well. I recently went to Atlanta and did two ceremonies, and I also did some live recordings. And since I just had time in the studio, your boy was pretty prolific. And in those 4 days, I recorded 47 songs. And so those will come out at some point, hopefully by December. Um, and the last thing is kind of starting a really beautiful community here in Phoenix. I hope co-host two men's groups that are really powerful, and that's really important to do. I think, again, you know, we need each other. Let's talk. And there's another place where we hold community gatherings. It's in Scottsdale, And the website for that is www.solunara222.com. That's SOLUNARA. And that's just a wonderful place for doing breath work and sound. And we have events on the calendar all the time. And it's a beautiful place to just meet. The older I get, buddy, the more I want to do things alone. I think, like, take for instance, if you're out and you're camping and you see a shooting star, you're like, oh man, that's pretty cool. But if four of your friends see the same shooting star, you guys are like, oh, right? It's just better together. Everything's better together. And so that's why I have 9 paddle boards. I don't want to go paddleboarding by myself. Come on, So um, those are just a few of the things that are happening.
I love that. And
Oh, what? I can add one
yeah,
more thing.
go.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
like to try to start a death cafe in January, and that's just a place where you can go. It'll probably be at Solinara, where we can go. And if you're sick and dying, if you've had somebody pass away, if you're afraid of dying, you can just go and talk about death and all of its tentacles.
So good. And I'm looking for a paddleboard that'll hold me because I'm big, and so maybe you're the guy that I need.
Nine, nine option.
Okay. Yeah, is there a place that people can find you besides the Solinara, or is there any other contact information you want?
My personal website is www.ayabuddy.com, AYABUDDY.com. And just, yeah, it's mostly integration work on there. Um, but because I just am a big proponent of integrating. But a little bit about me, and might be a little bit of death doula stuff on there as well.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, you say buddy a lot, so that's like so perfect of a website. You can't get any better than that. There was one thing that I forgot, and I wanted to ask you about if you have a few more minutes. It's really just about our organization, Huachuma Foundation. We're really working to be in service to this cactus, the Huachuma, and part of that is growing cactus. And I've seen pictures of your backyard, and you've sent me some videos. I'm curious if you'd share about what you're growing and how that relationship is a little bit with just growing the Huachumas.
It's been one of the biggest gifts of my life. There's something incredibly cathartic and powerful about nurturing something. For anybody that has a pet that relies on you, you understand what that is. And my first Huachuma, essentially, most of my plants are from 25 mother plants. And if you are familiar with Huachuma, you can have one that gives you 6. Those 6 give you 6 and 6 and 6. So if I had to guesstimate what I have in my backyard, is probably 300 to 350 of them. And twice a year, I don't really charge for that. As um, a gratitude for the stewardship, I will make 1 or 2 teas a year, and I take a group up north and kind of have a ceremony with it. But it has been one of the biggest joys of my life. I pretty much have just Echinopsis pachinoi, which is from the Peruvian part. And I don't know if you know what Echinopsis means, but Echinopsis means like hedgehog, spiky hedgehog from Pacha. And that's a really cool thing. I do have some Bolivian and Ecuadorian stuff, but it is. And what's crazy is that my grandma had lots of cactus growing up, and I always saw it as the ugly, prickly cousin of the plant family. And it wasn't until I grew up a little bit and saw what a beautiful thing it is to nurture. But part of my morning ritual is I take some hape and take some coffee, and I go outside and I'll sing to him for a little bit. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I don't know what else you'd like to know, but
I don't know. Danny is so excited about all the cactus stuff. You know that there's a big debate, and I don't want to get into it, but there are many people who don't use the Echinopsis name in the growing community because they think it was wrong. These cactus were part of the Trichocereus
Right.
forever, and then because of DNA analysis, which is just ridiculous, they said, well, it's actually closer related to these, hedgehog cactus, cacti, and but like, the purist will never say Echinopsis pachinoi. They'll always be Trichocereus
Yeah.
and the
The
many other ones.
ways me, Hamid, is that now the tri are under the Echinopsis family. That's how.
Yeah. There's so much muddying of these classifications. To me, it's really funny too because they all breed with each other. So like the Pachinoi, you can cross with the Peruvianus, you can cross with the Regesii, and if you think about like species just in general, usually species don't really cross with each other. It's sort of like, to me, they're just different shades of the same thing, which is why I like that they're known as Huachuma and San Pedro and Aguacoya, but there's so many different ones. They're like individuals and different personalities, but they're all the same too. We have a lot of Echinopsis here in Arizona, in that family, but like you see them and they're just covered in spines, right?
Yeah.
And, the Pachinois in particular don't have really any spines left. They kind of shed their armor a long time ago. So I think it's an interesting thing that they put them in that family.
Yeah. I say watch.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you, Omar. I don't have any more questions for you. I really value your time and your insights, and I'm happy you came on here. And if there's ever a time in the future you want to share anything that you're doing, we'd love to have you back, and we'd love to get updates on what happens in the jungle, and yeah, just keep us in the loop.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for this time. I, for a second there, forgot we were on a podcast. I thought I was talking to old friends. Really,
That's the idea.
yeah, you guys are doing it. And thank you. I mean, your friendship means a lot to me. Didn't get into it, but I pretty much hit Hamid up out of nowhere saying, hey, I'm a guy in the medicine space. I'm looking for other um, reverent men friends in the space. Would you have tea with me? And he was like, oh, sure. And so I'm eternally grateful that I did that. I definitely overthought it for a little bit, and I'm like, is this weird to ask this guy to go on a mandate with me and he doesn't even know me? But um I'm so happy I did. Thank you, brother. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, me too. And yeah, we'll have to get together soon when you're back from your travels. Be nice to catch up.
thank you, brother. Thank you for you doing. If I could do anything for the Huachuma Foundation, I would love to help you guys. So,
I love that. Yep, we'll keep you in the loop.
Thank you so much.
this is really fun. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
This podcast episode was a production of the Huachuma Foundation. If you would like to be a guest on our show, email us at huachumafoundation@gmail.com. If you would like to learn more about us or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. And most of all, remember to plant more, worry less.